Okay, so recently did a couple of videos about furloughs, and whenever you do a video, you're expecting to get certain comments. One of these videos, how furlough works, has blown up. Basically, we've had an awful lot of stuff about it, and I'm waking up in the morning with 15, 20, 30 comments every single morning, and they're along the lines of certain questions. Now, it's not unexpected when you do a YouTube video to get certain questions coming through, but the questions we're getting weren't what I was expecting. I was expecting questions along the lines of, can you clarify this point? What does this terminology mean, etc. and alike. But they tended to go along a certain theme, and it highlighted just how much employees don't trust their employers. So I decided to do a video on it. So as I say, we got a lot of comments and questions coming in about these videos, about furloughs, how they work, etc. But there were kind of a couple of themes that kept coming up. I'm talking 15, 20 questions were coming up along trying to find the exact same answer to these two question lines, basically. And it really made me think and demonstrated to me that employees don't trust employers. I'm not saying all employees don't trust employers, but it certainly demonstrated how that comes about. Before I go into what those questions are and go in a little bit more, I want to give you a bit of background because it will make a bit more sense. So I've been doing recruitment for a long time. I run the company basically, we got a number of staff, and I've been involved in recruitment for the best part of 10 years. I've done every job in recruitment basically. I worked my way up from a trainee, went up to manager, progressed up several levels, senior example, found myself as a regional manager, and now I run my own company. I've trained people that have gone on, become managers working for us, managed other staff, and those people themselves have even gone on to start their own companies. So being in recruitment and doing it as a job and as a career, so concentrated for so long, you get a very good understanding of how businesses work. And it takes me back to when I started doing the job. I remember coming out of university and starting in not just this job, but I did a couple of jobs before. And what you find is, like a lot of young people when they come out, university or whatever, they want to do well in their careers. They want to go and, impress and do a good job. And I was no different. I wanted to go and do a good job. And I found myself being that enthusiastic guy that wanted to try and get results, wanted to do well. But I remember pretty early on looking at people that were sort of 10, 15 years older than me and working with them and thinking, some of these people look like they've given up. They don't really look like they care too much. And you sort of had a conversation, got to know them, and they're perfectly all right. There's nothing wrong with them. But it's almost as if the spark has gone out, and you look at these people and you think, they don't look like they care anymore. What's kind of going on? Why have they changed? What's happened to them? And the longer you kind of do the job, and especially doing the job of recruitment, you kind of see how those things have come about. And you ask these people, whenever you have a conversation with them, why you like that? It's, why don't you go the extra mile for your employer? Why aren't you excited by it, etc. And when I was working with these people or whatever, and it's kind of the answers you kind of get along the lines of, look, I do my bit, they pay me, but I work between this hour, and I go home. I'm not going to do any more than what they ask me to do. I do my bit, fine, I'll follow the rules, but I'm not giving them any more than that. And you kind of think, well, sounds a bit selfish, why don't you go any further? But as I say, as you go through your career and the longer you do this job, and you don't even have to do recruitment to see this happen, once you've been in employment for a while, you see this kind of pattern happen. And it kind of made me think, where did this happen? How did this come along the line? Well, I've done this job for a while, I found the answer of why this happens. Through your career, basically, there will be a recession every 10 or so years. For whatever reason it is, whether it's pandemics or whether it's credit crunch, whatever, it will happen every 10 years. And that is when you start to see the true colours of companies come out. No matter what you did for them in the good times, no matter how good you were for them or how well you performed, they need you then. Your opinion of them matters to them at those points. But as soon as a downturn happens and you can't do anything, your performance is limited or whatever, all the promises, all the good stuff they said they was going to do, how they're going to look after you, it all comes out in the wash kind of thing, and you start to see the true colours of these companies and what they're really about. What sort of questions did I get? Two particular lines of questioning have been the two that have stood out. I mean, I'm talking, they've dominated. First question that of the two that's a real theme is along the lines of, I'm an employee, I'm on furlough, but my employer is making me work during my period of furlough. Are they allowed to do that? And I'm finding either they're describing the situation as my employer has had a quiet word in my ear basically and said, look, I know you're not meant to work whilst on furlough, but I need you to work during this period. Just keep it quiet. And what you'll get is some overtime pay, ranging up to, look, we found a legitimate way to get around this. If you only work certain hours a week, or you work evenings and weekends or whatever, you can get your overtime whilst on furlough, and it's completely legitimate. We've cleared it off with the government, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so I want to clarify these two. First of all, if your employer is asking you to work whilst on furlough and you go into work for that knowingly, and bear in mind receiving overtime payments for it, not only is your employer committing fraud, and they may well say to you, look, by the way, you doing this is fine. If HMRC come after us, it's going to be me that's going to cop it. It's not you, you're just an employee, it's fine. You could be considered in a court of law an accessory to that crime. Just let that sink in for a moment. The second one is where an employer is saying to you, look, it's completely legit, it's fine, don't worry about it. You can do these hours whilst you're on furlough. This is a legal loophole. We can get around it this way. I just want to clarify, it's not a legal loophole, it's rubbish. You cannot work whilst on furlough. So the employer will go onto a portal on gov.co.uk for HMRC where you can claim for furlough. And basically what they need to do is log on there, and the portal itself straightforward, but like most things online, when you go and agree to anything, there'll be a little tick box on there that says, by ticking this box, you agree with the terms, conditions and the above rulings and points, and by not abiding with any of these, you'll be breaking the law. Do you understand? Do you agree? By ticking this box, you're confirming this. So ticking it. And above that are two, amongst other things, but two very, very clear bullet points. The first one says, furlough periods, if you decide to put someone on furlough, it is for a minimum of 3 weeks at a time. And the second bullet point says for any employee that is on furlough, they cannot work for the company whilst on furlough. So if a company says to use a legal loophole, whilst you're on furlough, you can do overtime, extra stuff like that, you can't. It's rubbish. You cannot do it. There's one guy I can remember on there that's, I've had sort of a to and fro with the guy to try and explain to him that what they're telling you isn't true. These are the rules. This is the situation. And he's completely convinced, as are other people. No, my employer's told me this. It's completely legit. They said it's fine. Well, they're lying to you. And you're going to see investigations come over the coming weeks and months for this kind of stuff. This is going to happen. People are going to see this stuff where HMRC investigate companies. And in those companies, it's going to be a matter where they will quite easily find evidence that people have been working during that period. And what they'll then do is they will fine or could take very serious action on those companies, because it's fraud ultimately from the people that are responsible for making those decisions. That's it. If you as an employee are then found to be actively or knowingly working during that period, you are an accessory to that, to the crime of fraud. You might use, well, I didn't know that, but the amount of media coverage that's out there saying if you are on furlough, you cannot work. It's on adverts, it's on websites, all sorts of stuff, YouTube videos, it's popping up here and there. It's clear as day, you cannot work if you are on furlough. So there isn't really much of a leg to stand on. And if you're an employee and you get dragged into it, into a criminal investigation where charges are put against your employer and you're an accessory to that, and bear in mind, you've gained financially out of it from overtime. It's not as if you're doing it out of the goodness of your heart. You're gaining financially out of it. It gets really serious. The second question that has come across a theme is along the lines of, look, I'm on furlough, but my employer hasn't paid me yet. When I've asked them, why haven't you paid me? They've come back and said, look, we've tried claiming for it through HMRC, but we're still waiting for them to reimburse the money. Now, whilst this sounds like a fair enough excuse, and let's be frank about it, HMRC hasn't exactly got the best reputation for certain things, this again is complete rubbish. They are either incompetent or lying. And I'll explain why. Your wages, when you are paid on furlough, and you look at your bank statement, it does not come through from HMRC. It comes through from your employer, and there's a very simple reason for that. In your employment contract, one thing that's in there will be a regular pay date, whether that be weekly, monthly or whatever. You'll have an agreed pay date which is contractually in there, and your employer is contractually obliged to pay you on your pay date. Whether or not HMRC have reimbursed them or not for the furlough money doesn't make a blind bit of difference. Your employer is contractually obliged to pay you on that date. So by not paying you, your employer is in breach of contract. The second thing is, despite the fact that HMRC and the taxman or whatever hasn't exactly got the best reputation for being efficient and things like that, HMRC, to their credit, are bang on the money with this process and this system. The HMRC web portal that a company goes in, and I've used it myself, to log in for furlough claims is so simple a 10-year-old could use it. It's very basic. When they go on and log on to it, quite clearly it will state, and they make their claim and fill it out, they will receive a notification on the screen before and after and via email to say, once your claim has been submitted, the moment you press the button, 6 days later, the money will be in your account. And sure as the day you're born, the money is in their account 6 days later. From what I can tell and from what I've got, I haven't heard of one single instance of this payment system failing. I haven't heard anything. It seems almost bulletproof. It just works. And the amount of people that are coming through that quite innocently are being fobbed off by their employer on this pathetic excuse, which sounds legitimate, is ridiculous. So just to clarify, if you get that one, it is nonsense, rubbish. You've got a bunch of companies manipulating not just the staff that work for them, but manipulating certain systems in order to give themselves a better image to potential employees. So it's really difficult to even get a good reference point of who is a trustworthy company. And they are out there. There are some very, very good companies out there, but it's increasingly difficult in the modern world to get a true reference point of how good a company is. So what is a reliable reference point to judge whether a company is trustworthy or not? And this is where it becomes really difficult. So the obvious two are going to be employee review sites. Now, anyone in the know, to be honest with you, don't really take much notice of these. Just don't trust them because, simple terms, they're so open to manipulation. If you go onto these review sites, I'm not going to name any particular sites, but they're basically all the same. If you go onto them, they're so open to manipulation, it is unbelievable. What typically happens is when an employer has or receives a negative review from an employee, what tends to happen is miraculously the following morning, 20 positive reviews pop up within a 20-minute window from current staff members saying how wonderful the company is to work for. And what that happens, because these review sites work in a chronological order, the negative review gets pushed and pushed and pushed further down the list. And the aggregate score of, the average score of how good they are increases on them positive reviews. So it negates any negative reviews on there. And you might be thinking, well, maybe it's not the employer manipulating the system. Maybe the employees have spotted a negative review, felt really strongly that that can't be the case. That seems really unfair. We want to club together and defend the company and set the record straight and all put positive reviews, and we're going to do it first thing tomorrow morning. And while that's a wonderful thing to imagine, if I'm being honest with you, it just doesn't happen that way. Realistically, what happens is a director will come out to staff members or the senior manager or whatever, or the building or whatever, or they'll sit there and they'll send an email around basically saying, just to let you guys know, we received a negative review. It's quite upsetting. We do strive to sit there and improve the company. If any of you have any thoughts or wanted to leave a positive review or anything, feel free to do so. It's up to you what you put. We won't tell you obviously what way. If you felt the same way, that's fine. Which is code to your line manager basically going, get your staff to write positive reviews right now. And that happens tons and tons and tons. Go onto one of those review sites, find a negative review from an employee, and then look the following couple of days and the amount of positive. It's almost comical, the amount of positive comments that are on there from current employees. And a lot of the time, do you know what? These same employees that are writing it, if you actually check their LinkedIn and stuff, within 3 months, they've left. The other thing, and the other reference point you might get where you say, well, this is a good indicator of whether a company's trustworthy or not, are awards. An award-winning company. We all see it, we go, oh, they're award-winning, must be really good. Especially these top 100 or whatever lists from these different companies to go, how good they are to work for. And they seem like a pretty reliable source of information. You're thinking, well, they're award-winning, they must be a good firm to work for. And the problem is, again, this is open to manipulation. What you don't realise is the amount of times, just us, we get emailed from an award body to say, do you want an award? And they're even blatant enough to send us a price list. There's also other ways around it. If you are a company that's trying to win an award to better market yourself to potential employees, all you need is votes. Well, you can buy votes. You can go around and get all your friends to do this, get all that, try and do it, tell everyone to do it. If you do this, and the more votes you get, we'll give you a prize, we'll give you a hamper or bottle of champagne or something. And there's all these staff members, all these eager, keen young staff members going, oh yeah, tell everyone how brilliant it is, vote, 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 vote. And they get themselves pushed up the list. So whenever I look at a top 50 list or whatever, and these are big lists, these aren't minor local company, non-essential lists. These are the major ones around the country to say top 100 companies to work for, and there's a number of these. Again, I'm not naming any names for them of who these lists are, but I know personally a lot of the companies on there. And whilst begrudgingly some of the companies on that list, I've got to be straight, they are very good to work for, there's also companies on those lists that you look at and go, yeah, they've got a terrible reputation. And everyone in the know knows that they're a company you wouldn't want to work for, and yet somehow they're ranked in the top 20 best companies to work for in the UK. And you're looking at it, you're thinking, well, they're not. Everyone knows they're not a good company to work for, but they're ranked up there, and it's because the system has been manipulated. So again, they're not a reliable source. The only real reliable source of whether a company is trustworthy or not is whether you have someone who's a friend or family member that works there or has worked there recently, comes to you and goes, look, I've worked there for a while, I know what they're like, they're a really good firm, to be honest with you, great company to work for. Apart from that, there isn't, so you don't really know. It's no surprise that people become so cynical and don't trust their employers. I can see exactly why this happens and why it comes to this for so many employees around the country, and why they feel so disgruntled and they just don't trust their employers, because as soon as the employer has a chance to tell them a complete load of nonsense, they will. And who do you trust? And that's why people don't trust their employers that often. So that pretty much sums up the video, but is there things that have come up in your career where you made that transition, or you can pinpoint the transition when you enjoyed working for a company and something happened where all of a sudden you realised that they're not what you thought they were? What was that? What happened? Put your comments in the box below. Again, if you've got any other questions I haven't covered or any things have come up from this video, put them in there as well. If you like the video, click the like button, subscribe to our channel, and don't forget to click the bell icon so you won't miss any one of our forthcoming videos.